Hey folks, it's Gus G from Firewind. You're listening to Thunder Underground.
Welcome to episode 389 of the Thunder Underground podcast. Trent here as always. This week we've got a great one because Gus G is here on this podcast for the first time. Gus, of course, is one of the greatest guitarists in the world of heavy metal over the past 2+ decades. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff from throughout those past 2+ decades, as well as current stuff with his brand new album, Firewind, and a lot of other stuff as well with Gus. So we're going to get into that here very shortly. But before we do, I need to let you know who we are sponsored by. And that would be Sunset Tattoo, a tattoo shop located in Midtown Tulsa. Their tattoos are done good and proper. They're state licensed, and they are mother approved. Well over 25 years of experience from Jake Thompson and his crew over there. They accept walk-ins at any time, but you can also give them a call or shoot them a message ahead of time to set up an appointment to go in there and talk about what work you're looking to have done, or of course, to go in and get their opinion and their help. Hit up the socials. Facebook and Instagram are both Sunset Tattoo Tulsa, and you can see tons of photos of a lot of their work throughout the years. They excel in all different styles. I've personally had work done by Jake, and I'm looking forward to having more done soon. So give him a call and tell him you heard about him on Thunder Underground. We've also got DEB Concerts, a concert promoter based right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They've been bringing tons of great acts to this area throughout the years, like Saxon, LA Guns, Junkyard, Last in Line, Buck Cherry, Great White, Winger, Warrant. The list is great and long, and it continues to get bigger. April 6th at the Vanguard in Tulsa, Last in Line and Lita Ford together on the same night, co-headlining there at the Vanguard. Don't want to miss this one. So hit up the Vanguard's website for ticket info. Hit up debconcerts.com for more info as well. And of course, hit up the socials. Follow them on there. DEB Concerts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. They also book the Roadhouse stage at Rocklahoma every year. This year will be no different. And speaking of those socials, they recently just opened the window for submissions. If you've got a band and you want to play the Roadhouse stage at Rocklahoma, the info is all right there on their Facebook. So hit up DEB Concerts to find out how you can do that. And of course, as always, a huge thank you to DEB Concerts. Before we jump into the talk about Gus G, I guess one thing of major note when it comes to the world of hard rock or heavy metal would be the fact that just a couple of days ago, it was announced that Slayer is returning. They announced 2 different shows. They're headlining one of the nights at Louder Than Life this year in Kentucky, and then headlining one of the nights at Riot Fest this year in Chicago. Both those dates are in September. You know, this kind of came out of the blue. Kind of weird timing with the fact that, Kerry King, has been out there in the press talking about his solo venture. The album just basically under the name Kerry King, where he's got a great cast with him there. Phil Dimmel, on guitar. Amazing. One of my favorite guitarists over the past 20 years. And then you've got Paul Bostaph on drums, of course, from modern Slayer fame. And then we've got Mark, the vocalist of Death Angel, singing the vocals on this thing. So that's fantastic. That's beside the point, I guess. But in the promotion of this thing, talking about all the live shows they're going to do and everything, of course, he's been asked a lot about Slayer, and he's kind of ran his mouth a bit about past stuff, whether it be with Tom, mainly with Tom, or just whatever. He said a few unflattering things recently, and then all of a sudden, guess who's back? A band that said, we're retiring 5 years ago, but that's not really the point. The point is, I think that Kerry King was well aware of this, and talking shit about Tom Araya gets a little bit more press than not talking shit about Tom Araya. I mean, I don't know that that's the fact. That just seems pretty convenient to me, right? Because the whole Kerry King didn't know this thing was happening is obviously very untrue. The fact that, it's happening is cool. Not been one of those people that's ever cared if a band comes back. The Mötley Crüe thing was funny because they signed a contract that said they wouldn't. But, Slayer didn't do anything like that. In fact, They were one of the many bands that, when they did announce this and did go through the process of their final touring throughout 2019, they claimed that this was their final tour, all that. The whole loophole that a lot of bands have done throughout the years. Not a lot of bands, but a few. I'm not touring, but hey, we can do shows here or there, right? Which, whatever. I'm under the assumption that Kiss will do it as well. For some reason, really do believe Kiss probably won't tour again. That whole thing was real, but I'm sure a few years from now, there'll be a big Kiss show in Vegas or New York City or something. Really, why did I bring this up? Just because that's relevant news, I guess, that Slayer is at least back for 2 shows. Will we get more shows of that? Will anything else come of it? Who knows? Whatever. I'm cool with it. I'm good to see it. Glad to see it. All right, let's jump into the subject at hand, which is Gus G. The 10th album. 10th album from Firewind is coming out in 1 week. I don't know when you're listening to this, but it comes out on March 1st. With that being said, if at any point you've been a fan of Firewind, you're not going to be disappointed. I had the opportunity to listen to an advanced copy of this. And, as anyone can go online right now onto Spotify or wherever you stream your music at, and you can hear 5 of the songs already for this album. And I think there's only 11. Let me see. There's actually only 10 songs, right? So half the album is out. That's actually something we spoke about at the beginning of this interview. But with that being said, the full album is great. We talk about it here in a bit, but, Stand United is the name of this album, and the title track itself is killer. The lead-off track, Salvation Day, is one of those singles that's already out you can check out that is unbelievable. This album just kicks off, and it's Firewind. It's, some of the best power metal you can get out there, in my opinion. Great tracks throughout here. We talk a little bit about this song called Land of Chaos. A couple other songs here coming up. But really, when it comes to the landscape of power metal over the 21st century, Gus G is right there in the midst of all of it. Just the beginning of this guy's career, he was involved with not just one, but several of the bands that kind of became the preeminent power metal bands, of the 21st century, with like Dream Evil and Firewind and Mystic Prophecy and so on and so forth. To me, it's just amazing whenever a musician is a big part of more than one band in a genre, but to be as big of a part as he has been of more than one band. Of course, that turned into solely Firewind, after a few years. Just everything he's contributed to power metal, is immense, in my opinion. And that's not really an opinion. Everybody knows that. And of course, his time with Ozzy as well, known as well. And that's something else that we get into for a little bit, among many other things. But besides me here, sitting here telling you about the things we talk about, why don't we just jump right into this? Here is Gus G of Firewind. New album Stand United's out in about 3 weeks, and you've already released 5 singles, kind of giving fans a real idea of what to expect from this album. Kind of talk about the idea of having, half the album available before the official release.
Yeah, the whole idea of this album was to work the singles, basically. That was what, the label approached me with. That was their idea, because the format has changed so much these days. It's all about dropping that single on Spotify and trying to get playlisted,
Right.
in a sense, it's come full circle. This was what was happening back in the 50s, I guess, or 60s, when they would release, those 7-inch records, the singles, and then if they had enough hits, then they eventually would compile them and get the artist in the studio to do a few more tracks and release a long play record. That's what Elvis did, I guess, and Beatles, and going way back, right?
Right.
Um, I mean, nowadays, if you think about it, it's kind of become like that too, but in a digital world, obviously, in a digital era, and that's what the labels are looking at, I guess. So they said to me, you should do the album, but we should work the singles. Just give us singles first. So that was the whole. That's how we started with this project, with this album, and maybe that's why all the songs, or most of the songs, had this kind of up tempo vibe and more anthemic approach to it. Yeah, no, I wanted each song to be able to stand on its own, kind of. That was like that was the mindset.
Well, you guys released Destiny is Calling like a full year before the album release. Was that part of this intentional plan?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, um, Destiny's Calling. I mean, to be honest, that was the only song that we managed to finish before we went on the European tour, and we thought we should have a song finished to drop during the tour. So Destiny's Calling served its purpose. Like, we were on a massive European tour with Beast in Black. So we're on tour for 2 months. So we put out a new song during that too. So, and then when we came back from tour, we went back in the studio and then finished a couple of more tracks. Um, and then we originally planned to release the album last year, but then because we were like back and forth with touring and things like that, we took our time to finish the record. And right before that, right before we started putting out more new music, we put out a Blu-ray and a double live album, because we had a show recorded from our 20th anniversary celebration, like a hometown show. And so we put that out last summer, and right after that we started dropping new singles, and basically leading up to today.
Kind of talking about what you just talked about a minute ago about the early days of rock and roll with releasing singles. Do you miss, kind of what we grew? I mean, we're about the same age, mid 40s. Do you miss kind of what we grew up with the full albums and buying an album and kind of just enveloping the full thing, which kind of got lost on a younger generation, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I I mean, I do miss record shops.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I used to take the bus and go downtown and just go hang out. Like, on Saturdays, that's what we did. We would take the bus downtown and we'd go to record shops, and we just look for vinyls or CDs, for that matter. Like in the mid '90s, the CDs came out, but you could still find a lot of vinyls. And like when you decided to buy an album, it was like, I mean, that you spend all your money in that, you better like it.
Right.
so, so, but even if you didn't like that, you would go. It would be like a whole ritual. You would take that back home and then sit there in the couch and really, like, read the credits while you're listening to the album. And yeah, I mean, I kind of miss that, because now, only for the reason, because now we don't really focus so much on anything. Like, everything is lasts for like 30 seconds.
Right.
Only for that, really, not for anything else. And I mean, of course, I wish the younger kids now could have experienced that kind of thing that we experienced, in our age when we were young. But on the other hand, I accept that the technology moves on, the world moves on, and we're here now, and this is how people consume music today. I'm pretty sure people consume a lot more music today. It's just through a different format, through a different way. The only sad part, like I just said, is, for me, that there's not much attention and care put anymore into what we consume.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. When I was a kid, if you would have told me that one day I'd be able to listen to anything I want at any given moment, it would have blown my mind. But then you
Yeah,
also kind of miss that moment of
yeah,
just focusing on one band for an hour, like you said, reading those
yeah.
notes and, just looking at the album
Exactly.
cover, all that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, I like it that we are able to access everything through the phone. I mean, I'm not saying I don't like that. It's just that yeah, it has made everything, like, have like the duration of whatever the experiences of listening to a song is it's much less nowadays. It's I was watching this documentary recently with Nile Rodgers,
Oh, wow.
and he's a legend, right? And he was saying that back in the day, like he had a really valid point. He said back in the day, you could measure like music. Okay, a song has a value. Maybe it's worth like $1.50 or something because you buy a CD or an album with 10 songs for like $15. So you could kind of say that one song was worth $1, right? More or less.
Yeah.
And now that doesn't exist anymore. Like there's no, the currency is gone. Like the currency is time. Like you ask from people to lend you their time to listen to your music. So it's interesting concept.
Yeah, that's a great point I hadn't really thought of.
Yeah.
Kind of back to, the album. You after, producing the earlier Firewind albums yourself, you've had Dennis Ward producing the last few. What made you decide to bring in someone from the outside in, and how do you feel he's helped, advance the sound of Firewind throughout these last several years?
Well, the thing is, Firewind was going through a rough time in the middle of the previous decade, about 10 years ago, to a point when after our singer left with Apollo, uh, which a lot of our fans would consider our golden era. Uh, uh, but after he left the band, like we had a really successful touring year, but after that we tried to tour with somebody else, and that didn't work out. And I decided to put the band on a hiatus for a few years. Um, and then it was just hard for me to really find motivation to put it back together again. I went on to do solo albums and solo tours. And sorry. And yeah, I eventually, um, I knew Dennis. We had worked on some songs right before I joined Ozzy. I was supposed to start the Unisonic project with him, and then I joined Ozzy, and then obviously I backed out of that. And yeah, then they did Unisonic with Kai Hansen and Michael Kiske, the Halloween guys.
Oh,
Um, but the one of the Halloween managers was talking to me like around that time, to mid 2015 or like 16. He said, "You should talk to Dennis. Like he could really help you with, he could be a good, solid songwriting partner and help you get the band rolling again." And he was right. He put us in touch again, and we started writing songs, and that became the comeback album, which was Immortals, and it had really really good reception. And from there on, we've just become like a songwriting team. He even participated in my solo project. He played bass and sang on some songs, and we did a few tours together. So now he's like he's my go-to guy in the studio. Like I always send him ideas, and or even if I co-write with somebody else, I always send something to Dennis and be like, "Hey, what do you think about this? And do you have any ideas, suggestions?" Yeah,
do you like that
he's a
outside
valuable.
input? I mean, because
Yeah.
earlier before when you didn't have that, does it feel more complete to you now that you've got that kind of sounding board?
Well, before we, there was a songwriting team within Firewind. So, I would write stuff with Apollo and with Bob, our keyboard player. So between the three of us would kind of have enough material, good material to pick and choose and make a record.
Okay.
And then when that team sort of fell apart, I mean, I can write stuff on my own, but I always believe that, um, like when I do stuff on my own, I'd rather just keep it solo. That's that's where I can get to experiment and do whatever the hell I want. But within Firewind, I always like the idea of, I'm old school like that. I want to have a singer that I can write with and bounce off of each other ideas. And then yeah, I mean, Dennis proved to be like a really valuable partner, and kind of like a Swiss Army knife because he can do everything. He can engineer, mix the records, he masters the records, he co-writes, and if he doesn't co-write, he can give us his opinion on things and suggest some things that sometimes I would not think. And It's good to have like an outside opinion sometimes. Yeah.
Big fan of Herbie's voice on his last this album and the last album. Like, how do you feel? His vocals have benefited Firewind.
Oh man, I think Herbie is a big asset to Firewind. He brought a lot of things to the table. I mean, not only he's a great singer, he's a great front man. He's a all around nice and positive guy. He brought that kind of positivity and excitement that we needed to move forward. Um, and uh, and he's a very likable guy. It seems that a lot of fans love him, and he had a lot of people that were following him also from Avantasia and his other bands, and he's just a really easygoing guy, good to work with, great to work with, very easy. And he has helped me in other areas of the band too. Like he helps to with kind of like day-to-day stuff, whereas because I'm managing the band too and I'm doing a lot of things, so if I need something, Herbie's a good guy to kind of ask something, and he can help. He's a kind of guy who has ideas, and he can help bring them to realize them, basically. Yeah.
As far as writing the music goes, whenever he joined the band, was that kind of an instant connection between you guys, or how long did that kind of chemistry take?
Well, when he first joined, but part of the audition was I sent him one of our old songs. I asked him to sing over that and see how he does that. And then the next was like I sent him one of the new songs and I asked him to write something over it, see if how his ideas sound. And the first song we wrote was "Devour," which was on the previous album. And when he sent me those vocal lines back, I was like, okay, this is the guy. And then from then on, that the previous record was done under a tight deadline. We had already written a bunch of stuff, me and Dennis, but then some of the stuff needed. Dennis could not complete the production with us because he was busy with Halloween at that time. So in comes Herbie, and then he completes the other songs that were missing vocal lines, and I started writing lyrics to quickly to help finish things. I mean, that was like, mind you, this is like pre-pandemic, and we had like a big world tour planned, and that's why we were under a tight deadline. And then we rushed to finish everything, and then the world shut down.
Right.
Yeah, but that was like 4 years ago, and now by now he's fully integrated in the band. We've done tours, we got to know each other, spent a lot of time. We've been around the world together. So we started doing this project from scratch together.
Well, as far as the songs in this album, I think my favorite track is one of the ones that hasn't been released yet, which is Land of Chaos. What do you remember
Oh,
about the writing and the recording process of that track?
um, this was just like one of the songs that I wasn't sure if they would make a Firewind song or maybe like end up on a solo record of mine, because it has, I don't know, a different kind of vibe to it. Uh, like this different type of metal, almost like this kind of modern metal. But then again, I don't know. I said, let's try it out. It was one of those songs that I just sent it to Herbie, and okay, let's try this out. And he uh, he came up with some vocal lines. I pretty much wrote that one out. Most of it I can't really remember, but we went back and forth. Like I presented him some vocal lines. He like he did it on his own style. He added his own touch to it, and then it was it was put together pretty quickly, and it was easy to write. Yeah,
That's a good point. I didn't really think about the fact that it, kind of is stylistically different. So maybe that's why it jumped out at me. The first two tracks, Salvation Day and Stand United, really grabbed me. But by the time I got to Land of Chaos, it really just kind of, maybe that's what it was. It just set off different than the rest of the album.
yeah, and I think that it's that's why we placed it at that, like, at track number 7. Like it gives like this different tone on the album. Whereas you have all these anthemic type of tracks or whatever, then you have this one, and it's like, I don't know. It could almost be like a song for another band,
Right.
but yeah, but somehow we made it work for Fireman. Yeah.
Well, another one of the tracks is your guys' cover of Talking in Your Sleep. Whose idea was that? Your idea to cover that, or did someone else come with that idea?
Yeah, that was my idea.
Okay.
The thing is, it's one of those songs that, well, first of all, let me start by saying that we struggled to find a cover because we really wanted to do a cover, but we've been talking about it within the band for so long, and all the 80s pop hits have been done like millions of times by so many metal bands. And we just didn't know what to do anymore. And then this is a song that is always on the radio here in Greece. And when I drive around town, it's always comes up. And one of those days I just listened to it and was like, this one. So I Googled it to see if any other metal bands have covered it. And then luckily nobody did it. And um and then the next thing was like I suggested it to the guys, and turns out everybody was a fan of that song. They loved it. So it was just an obvious choice.
Or once you got the album completely, track list laid out and everything, how do you feel Talking in Your Sleep fits in with the overall theme of the album?
Oh, it's not a song that fits with the theme really.
Right.
It's just like a little what do you call it? Like a little bit of a departure. Like okay, here's a covered track, and we've done that before. We did that back in the when we did the Premonition. We did it with Maniac.
Oh yeah.
So it was just one of those. We originally planned we wanted to record two or three covers, but we were running. We couldn't just come up with the right ideas, and this one was just the best idea, and we just said that okay, let's do that, and let's put it on the album. It'll be a fun little thing to have, and in there, like maybe like it'll surprise the listeners. Maybe some people will know it, and some people will not know it, but will go like, okay, what is this?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I know you're, obviously in Firewind mode right now, but is there any chance we see another solo album in the next year or two?
Um, it's it could be a possibility. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. Right now I'm really focused on this next tour and this next album, and see how busy that will keep us if the tour gets extended, or if we keep going into 2025 doing tours and gigs. And if we do that, then I have to see when I will have my next kind of like downtime to start writing, and that will sort of determine like my inspiration for that will determine whether that'll be like a solo record. Like I still have to think what the next solo record should be. So yeah, but I'm not worried about it yet. It's not a priority at the moment.
I mean, I know, like you said, it's not a priority, but when you say what it would be, do you mean like either fully instrumental, like Quantum Leap, or a collaboration
Yeah,
of
yeah,
vocals, or having Dennis Ward back, that kind of thing?
yeah. Like I don't know exactly what I want to do next. I mean, I like the instrumental path that I took on the last record. I don't know if I should do like a mix of that or I mean of instrumentals and vocals, vocal songs. Um, I don't know if I should just like there's plenty of ideas around. I don't know if it should be collaborations, maybe not even with singers, maybe with other musicians. Just maybe guitar players or even just other instruments. Like I don't know. There's like tons of ideas on my mind right now, which I haven't put in a proper context yet.
Speaking on that, whether it be a vocalist or another musician, is there anybody like specifically that you never recorded with that you would love to have on a future song of yours?
Um, no, not really. I haven't really made a any specific list yet, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, of course, if you ask me if I would like to collaborate with some of my guitar heroes, of course, yeah. Like I can drop names. I mean, I'd love to do a song with Joe Satriani or I don't know, or Al Di Meola or John Sykes or whoever. But I mean, I don't know if that's the way that I'm gonna try and go. It really it's just too early to say.
Well, you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier when you were talking about writing with Firewind, but when you write an instrumental song, do you write it with the intention of it being instrumental, or does that kind of process just happen after you get going, if vocals aren't involved, that kind of thing?
Um, yeah, I don't. It's like the instrumentals. I don't know where they take me. That's the thing. Like usually everything is like riffs for me and themes. So everything starts with the intention to have vocals. When I did Quantum Leap, because it was like a lockdown mode and I was at home and I knew I couldn't really meet up with anybody or everybody was just at home doing their thing. I thought, well, now is the time to really focus on this. So I just dug out a bunch of older ideas and started putting guitar themes over them. Like instead of trying to do vocal lines, I was, I was doing guitar lines, thinking like a singer would, but you know, play it on the guitar.
Right.
And that's how the whole album developed. And then from there on, I started making more ideas. But then when I started making new ideas, I was thinking of them as instrumentals now. But I had to get into that mood. I had to jump into that mood and create that mood. Um, like nowadays, if I would write something, it'll probably just to me, it's like it starts with a riff or two riffs, and I really don't know where that will go.
Well, something that's always intrigued me about instrumental music is obviously when you have vocals and words, it's easy to have a theme or a title for the song, but where do you get inspiration for a title of a song that doesn't have any
Oh,
words?
oh yeah, that's a good point because that's always the toughest thing actually is to baptize the songs
Right.
like, because they have no lyrics. I mean, you can think of certain things when you make them or whatever, something that like a feeling that might come. But I mean, it's hard. I remember I was asking Marty Friedman about it years ago. I said, "How do you?" Because he's done so many instrumental records. I said, "How do you come up with song titles, man?" He said, "Oh man, it's so tough." He said, "I have to write them down. Like I have like a note, like he makes notes of phrases he likes or lyrics or a lyric or maybe a word he heard in a movie or something, and he just keeps like this. He has this big folder of like words and phrases and stuff, and then he just picks and chooses, and that's how he names his songs. And I kind of I like that idea, and I kind of stole that too. I sometimes I make notes, I take down notes. Oh, like quantum leap, cool. That's a cool word. That's a cool phrase. Yeah. Or I'll hear a word in a movie or something. I'll be like, okay, cool. Exosphere. Yeah, I saw that in a sci-fi movie. Okay.
So it's kind of one of those things where, like, after you have the song, you'll look at your list and think, well, this looks like it fits with what I did here, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Like if the song has a certain mood or an atmosphere or a certain vibe, then yeah, then you can come up with something. Yeah.
Well, switching gears a tiny bit, during your time with Ozzy, you guys toured with Slash as an opener. I mean, I know your
Yep.
styles are totally different, but did you learn anything by seeing the process of a legendary guy like that, that's kind of in a different rock genre than you are on a daily basis?
The thing is, I mean, we did not see much of Slash on that tour. He was always busy, and he like joined us a couple of years later when we did the Ozzy and Friends tour in Europe.
Okay.
And he was one of the guests, and he would come up some of the nights and jam with us. And Slash is one of the hardest working people I've seen in the business, man. He was always traveling somewhere. He would fly overnight to go do, I don't know, maybe some promo thing, some TV promo thing in some other country, and then he would join us in Sweden the next morning for the show, and then off he was somewhere else to in Poland to do a show with the conspirators, and then he would join us back for the Aussie and Friends thing. So he's really hardworking guy and super cool guy, and yeah, like works hard, man. It was inspiring to see that.
When you first started rehearsing songs to tour with Ozzy, well, was there any solos or parts by Randy or Jake or Zach that took a bit to get down, or was it all pretty, simple for you?
I mean, look, I did my homework. I practiced hard
Yeah.
the songs. I did my research on YouTube, of course. Not only I didn't only listen to the album versions, but I would listen to. I tried to dig up like recordings from other guitar players from other eras and see how this guy did that or how this guy did that. So like how did Zach play all the stuff in the '80s or in the '90s, or how did Jake play all the Randy stuff, and so on. And it's just interesting, just to do that type of research. So yeah, for me, like I did my homework, and some of the stuff was more challenging than other stuff. So yeah, so it was. it was cool to go back and do that type of homework.
When you were doing that research on, say, Randy Rhoads, was it something where you tried to capture what he was doing live in a solo, or did you kind of incorporate your own into it as well? And but also, obviously honoring what he did.
Well, it's kind of hard to change Randy's stuff and put
Right.
your own spin to it because his solos were so well constructed and thought out and planned out.
Yeah,
There
good
were
point.
no, yeah, they were not like improvised solos. Okay, there were like a few improvised moments, like maybe on say Suicide Solution, the middle section. That was a part where I could just go off and do my thing. But in general, you just kind of stick to what it is. Like I'm not gonna go in and change the solo to Crazy Train. That would be stupid.
Right.
Um, yeah, and I saw it also from a fan perspective. Like if I go to an Ozzy show, what do I expect to hear? I expected the band to kick ass and back him up perfectly and play the songs as good as possible. So that's what I would expect if I went to an Ozzy show. And I think that's how everybody in the band looked at it. That's how everybody approached the gig. And I mean, Ozzy never said a thing. He was pretty pleased. He seemed happy with the way we did this. So yeah.
On the album, on Scream, I know that you've said in the past you weren't involved in the writing process, but I feel like the guitars on that album is probably the heaviest that, Ozzy had really ever been as a solo artist. Was that just the way it happened, you think, or was that like an intentional process that
Um,
they went into the recording with?
I mean, it was a different album, right? It was a bit more on the, that was his. He was working with Kevin Chirk on those albums, Black Rain and Scream, and he had a little bit that more modern, heavy, a bit industrial type of vibe to it. Um, and then again, and my sound has that kind of more modern, high gain touch to it. So maybe that's why it sounds the heaviest of all. Um, so yeah, like I don't know. That was they also it could be the nature of the songs. I know that Kevin tried to do some riffs that reminded of Sabbath, like that song "Let It Die" have like a pretty doomy riff. So there's a lot of Sabbath references to it, but then there's like all this modern stuff going around it. Yeah.
Going back even further, when you look back at the beginning of your career, I mean, a lot of artists go their entire career without putting out 10 or 12 albums, and you were a part of 11 or 12 albums by 2005. With all that
But
happening, in your early to mid 20s, do you feel like you were able to appreciate everything that was happening while it was happening?
I mean, everything was going so fast. Everything was happening fast at that time. I didn't really stop and think for a minute there. That was not the time for me to stop and think, oh, I've done this
Yeah.
and this. And so I would just jump to the next thing without thinking about it too much. Nowadays, you think more about um, your next moves and what you want to do. Maybe because we're getting older and we're considering, time is more precious now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, yeah, it was, I was being very productive and in my 20s, playing with many bands and all that. And yeah, it was interesting. And then eventually I kind of like settled down and focused on my own thing.
But with all that going on with like what, four different bands, did you ever have like any extended period of time off, or was it just constant, constant, constant?
Yeah, it was like pretty much like one project after another. There was no downtime.
Yeah.
And I loved it, it was I was building my career, I was building my name, so I was really hungry for that at that time.
Also, speaking of, even earlier than that, a friend of the podcast, Luke Nagel, wanted me to ask you, would you ever considering writing a full record with James Malone? Because he said he knew you wrote a couple demo songs for the first Firewind demo, or is that someone
We
you've
we
ever
did
even kept in contact with throughout the years?
actually. What is James doing nowadays? I haven't heard from him in years.
I'm
Do
actually
you
not
know?
sure. He just sent me that question this morning.
Okay, okay. I mean, me and James we met when I went to Berkeley in '97, and uh we hit it off right away. We made a band when we were at Berkeley. We went to the summer program, and we wrote a couple of songs together. We would just kind of like do 4-track demos together. And at that time, I was really hoping that me and James would start like a cacophony style type of band. Um, but then, yeah, like we both went and did our own thing. Um, yeah. So sorry, I forgot what was the question. If I would do something with James, like a full
Or
record.
yeah, if I mean, if there was ever any thought of writing a full record, or if writing in the, if that's someone you've really kept in contact with, you kind of answered that. But
Yeah, the thing is, I haven't. I've lost touch with James. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know where he is. Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to just catch up with him and see how he's doing.
do you have any of the songs that were part of the writing process for any of the other bands back then, like Dream Evil or Mystic Prophecy, that you think would work well in a Firewind set, or is that even something you would even consider?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't do that. I mean, I've
Oh,
I've done a little bit of that on one of my solo tours.
okay.
Like I think that was, yeah, about 10 years ago. I went out and I did like some of my solo material when I had my first couple of albums. And then I on one of the tours I did like a Dream Evil song and I did a Firewind song. I didn't do any Mystic Prophecy stuff, but yeah, like I did a little bit of all that, and then I did like an Aussie song, or at some point I would do like an Aussie medley or something. And then I kind of dropped that, like I thought building my solo career, I should probably uh, focus on that, on doing my own material and build that up. And so, but these are all cool ideas. Depends on the theme you want to present. Like it has to have some kind of meaning for doing that.
Throughout all those solo albums and all the Firewind albums and those early albums we just mentioned, like, you've worked with tons of vocalists throughout the years. Outside of obviously, what you're doing now with Herbie, do you have anything that stands out as like a favorite vocal performance from one of your albums? Would it be Apollo, or is it something, another album?
Well, here's the thing. One thing that I'm proud of. I always say that Firewind has had many singers, but all of them were amazing. They were great.
Yeah.
Like I'm proud of all the guys that I've worked with. Like their vocal abilities, their tone of their voices, and the performances they put on our albums. Whether it worked out between us or not, for whatever reason, like that doesn't take away anything from all those guys being great singers. Like from Stephen Frederick to Chitty to Apollo. Um, I love Henning Bass's performance on Immortals. He, he sang like his life depended on it. He sang great, and Herbie's singing great. So they've all been great, man. Like yeah, like I don't think we lacked in that department ever.
Right.
Yeah, I mean we haven't had a stable singer, but we've never had like any mediocre singers. They were all incredible.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. Well, you guys have, this tour with Master Plan in Europe coming up, and then a US tour with Edge of Paradise going, this is going into May. Like, what can we
Yeah.
expect throughout the rest of the year from Firewind?
Well, I mean, I'd like to tour this album as much as possible. Yeah, I mean, we're starting in Europe in a few days, and then we're heading over to the States. It's going to be the first headline shows we've done in quite a few years in the States. Um, you know, I hope people can come out and support that. I know we're probably competing against a lot of bands this spring touring America, but yeah, we're gonna go out there and do our best. And after that, we go to Japan, and I hope we can just keep rolling, man. Like there's talks about going back and doing like round two in Europe in the fall. So there's talks about South America. So there's ideas. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm hoping to hit you at the Dallas show at the end of the US tour. I've seen, I got the chance to see you with Ozzy, but I've never had the chance to see Firewind live.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
dude, you should come out to the show then.
Yeah, I'm about 4 hours north of there, so I'm definitely going to try to make that one.
Cool, cool.
Kind of a final question for you. I mean, you've We talked about it a little bit with singles at the beginning of this talk, but technology's changed a lot throughout the past 20 plus years of your career. Do you enjoy where the process is at now? Or is that something you really thought about as it's changed throughout the years? As far
You
as
mean
recording goes, I mean, and that kind of thing.
recording? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, look, this is very convenient nowadays. I like that part. That's I don't really have to go into an expensive studio and sit there and the clock ticking, and then I'm getting nervous about recording and stuff. I hated that part always. Now I have my own studio, and I can just record whenever I want, and we can we can share files and with the band or with Dennis, for example, or whoever we're working with. That has made life so much easier. That is like the technological part. That is, I mean, it's a miracle that we can do these things nowadays. So I'm really all up for that. I mean, it's also really convenient to record great guitar tones now with all the plugins and stuff that's available. It's incredible.
And I mean, even recording process, like the last interview I did was with Brian Tatler from Saxon and Diamond Head, and he, mentioned Saxon recorded their newest album in like basically four different countries, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we are doing it like that too. Like I do my guitars here in Greece,
Okay.
and like we track drums in Germany, in a different studio. And then Herbie, he lives in Germany, but he has also a home studio, so he tracks all his vocals in his studio. Um, so we do it like that, remote. Yeah,
So I guess that kind of, I mean, that's another, a huge change from, I'm sure, the early days of you doing this, whenever you probably everybody went in a studio, at least the same studio, whether it was at the same time or not.
I mean, back in the day, we used to travel in the studio all together, and we
Yeah.
would rent, like we would do like a lockout. We would just hire the studio for a full month, and we would all live there. There would probably be like guest rooms, and we would all live there and for a month, and wake up in the morning and just go to recordings. And whenever the drummer was finished, then like, okay, bass up next, or guitars or whatever, and the other guys were just waiting around. So I mean, we've done a couple of records like that. Like the Premonition was done like that. Allegiance was done like that. But before that, we actually started out as a file exchanging band too. Like in the early 2000s, the first two records were done with just sending files. But back then it was on CDs because you couldn't send all that with email. We didn't
Right.
have we didn't have the fast enough internet.
Yeah.
So I mean, when I got signed to Leviathan Records and I was working with David Chastain, I would just send everything on a CD, all the files, send it over to America, and then he would do the vocals, send it back to me. Um, it was harder and took longer to do things like that, but we got it done.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, nowadays, like I said, it's you can you can get such great sounds just in a home studio and in your bedroom, with plugins and things like that, and just like a Pro Tool system and just a normal interface. And um, so that has become a big it's a very helpful tools. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how far it's come, just like us sitting here talking on Zoom, and you could, hop on Zoom and talk with one of the other guys about, hey, you like this part or whatever, how quick it makes it, that process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, Max, absolutely loving the new album and hoping to see you live, like I said, and I appreciate you taking the time with me today.
Excellent. Thank you, my friend. Have a good one there.
There you go, Gus G of Firewind. A huge thank you to Tim from Atom Splitter PR for his help with that. And of course, a massive thank you to Gus for taking some time out there to hit me up on Zoom and talk about the brand new album Stand United from Firewind, as well as you heard, a bunch of other stuff from throughout his career. Stand United is out May 1st, this coming Friday. The 10th studio album from Firewind. You don't want to miss it. Pre-order that thing. Buy some vinyl. Do whatever it is you do. If you don't buy physical stuff, just stream the hell out of it. We got to support great artists when they put out great music. So do that with any band you love at all times, right? All right, if this is your first time listening, greatly, greatly appreciate it. There's 388 previous episodes you could check out. Just a couple episodes, Brian Tatler of course, from Diamond Head fame, and he's now the guitarist, one of the two guitarists in Saxon as well, who just put out their 24th album. Check that out. Great episode from Brian. Of course, we've got some great stuff coming up. Just recorded an episode with Jack Russell, the original voice of Great White. He has a great new album with Tracy Guns that just came out called Russell Guns. Very cool one to check out if you have not. You can also check out tons of previous ones we've had on Gene Simmons of Kiss, Bruce Kulick, formerly of Kiss, Vivian Campbell of Def Leppard and Dio, and Last in Line, Dizzy Reed of Guns N' Roses, Chris Broderick, formerly of Megadeth, In Flames, all kinds of great stuff throughout the years. If you're a fan of Gus G, you could be a fan of Chris Broderick. So check that out. Also had on Dave Ellefson, formerly of Megadeth a couple times, James Lomenzo, who is formerly of Megadeth and now back in Megadeth. Members of Shinedown, Buck Cherry, White Zombie, Typo Negative, Motley Crue, Testament, Warrant, Whitesnake, Winger, Queensryche, Skillet, Alice Cooper, Black Label Society, Billy Idol, Killswitch Engage, Clutch, Seven Dust, COC. The list is great and long. So just dig back through there, look for stuff you like, check them out, download them, click like, subscribe, wherever you're listening right now so you don't miss those future episodes. Anytime you see a post on any social media, if you just like it, comment, or share, that's a huge help as well. I've also got the website, thethunderunderground.com. You can listen to the website directly on there. You can also listen pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Music. Just Google it. It should be the next thing down under the Ozzy song, Thunder Underground. And now as I'm saying that out loud, it's kind of funny. I just talked to a former member of Ozzy's band. Of course, he did not play on the song Thunder Underground. That was a Zakk Wylde era song. There's a very loose connection there, right? I think he's probably the second, let me think about that. So I should have thought of it beforehand. Probably the second person that's played with Ozzy that has been a guest on this podcast. Brian Tishy has been on here a couple times. And he's been in tons of great stuff throughout the years, so. Anyway, once again, check all that stuff out. Check out the new album from Firewind, etc., etc. All right. Once again, a huge thank you to Sunset Tattoo, DEB Concerts, Adam Splitter PR, and Gus G. And until next time.
Thunder Underground, y'all.